How about we start with Aaron?
Okay, Aaron.
Okay. Oh, look at that. I didn't even submit a PowerPoint. You guys found one. That's great. Yeah, my name's Aaron Barnett, and I know some of you on here. It's nice to see some familiar faces and names. So I, as the PowerPoint presentation slide says, I do outreach with boaters, marine yacht clubs, port districts, and that's also commercial vessels in commercial ports, county ports, city ports. And I also work in Eastern Washington, and mainly it's sewage and oil spill prevention for small recreational and commercial vessels. And then we're mostly involved with the Pump Out Washington program, which is a focus on boater sewage. We manage an app, an interactive app that boaters can use to find a pump out and then report it once down and so on. The biggest role I've played in the RFP process and with researchers and PIs is connecting them with port staff. So if someone has a project that involves access to port property or port services, that is something I have helped with in the past. And then there's other people, colleagues of mine that can help with that as well. That's really about it. Russell, have I left anything out? Okay.
Sounds great, Aaron.
Yeah, not only that, but Aaron also has a lot of connections with the marina community. So if there's projects that involve marinas as well, he could help out there. Thanks, Aaron. I think that was great. Next up is Jackson Blaylock.
Yeah. Hey there, I'm Jackson Blaylock. I work as community engagement specialist for Sea Grant. I'm located in South Bend, Washington, which is in Pacific County along Willapa Bay. My current work's focused along the Pacific coast of Washington, so the Olympic coast, the Columbia River littoral cell, which encompasses Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor, and the lower Columbia River upstream through Wahkiakum County. My work supports communities' adaptation to changing environments, particularly as it relates to coastal hazards and climate change and climate adaptation and ecosystem-based management. And through that work, I support the development of resilient long-term plans, collaborations, physical projects that may look beyond the site or partial scale to connect larger issues. So do this through agency coordination, project scoping assistance, funding opportunities, identification, outreach, and connecting science to action and other needs, of course. So try to stay aware of what coastal issues exist and what are gaining momentum as well. So you can go to the next slide, please. So feel free to get in touch with me. My email is right there. If you're looking to support local visions, needs, or projects, particularly with resilience related topics or issues within that Pacific coast geography that I described. And I may be able to connect you to interested parties. I work with a number of entities and may also be able to connect you to a past, present, planned research or specific on the ground projects. For example, here's a project I'm involved with on the Washington Coastal Hazards Resilience Network website. It shares case studies of coastal hazards projects in Washington and trying to amplify emerging best practices, innovative designs, funding strategies, and collaborations, and other lessons learned. As I mentioned, I'm aware of a number of potential projects and needs across the coast and look forward to hopefully providing connections between your work and local issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackson. Next up is Meg Chadsey.
Good morning, everyone. As you can see from my slide, my role at Washington Sea Grant is, at least it started as ocean acidification. I've sort of listed things that I've expanded into during my time at Washington Sea Grant. I am also a liaison to the NOAA Pacific Marine Environmental Lab just up the street, where I primarily work, as you might guess, with the carbon dioxide group there. But kind of top down, going from the top down, these are sort of things I know about, am fascinated by, and am enthusiastic about working with other partners on. In order, ocean acidification is still nearest and dearest to my heart, but it's part of climate change and a lot of I've just sort of become bilingual over the years. Carbon drawdown is a new hot topic. In fact, I am bopping back and forth right now between this outreach event and a marine carbon dioxide removal conference. So it is getting a lot of attention right now. I'm trying to get up to speed, and I hope to bring a slightly critical, clear-eyed view of this new potential to mitigate climate change and ocean acidification to any project that I partner with. Kelp aquaculture is kind of part of the carbon drawdown universe right now, but it can also has so many other benefits that should be taken into account. And I've been involved in kelp aquaculture in Puget Sound since the first farm in many, many years, launched in 2017. And I'm also doing work on the national level through the Sea Grant Seaweed Hub. Land-sea connections might be a little vague, but to me it's crystal clear. It's all about carbon. We've got too much carbon in the atmosphere and too much in the ocean, not enough in the land. We need to reverse the flow of carbon and nutrients from the land into the ocean, and hopefully get some of that excess carbon back into the land where it can be, I won't say sequestered, I will say stored, because stored does not imply thousands of years. And finally, marine renewable energy is also part of the same puzzle. It's about moving off of fossil fuels. Next slide. So I like to do fun, exciting things. And so in my outreach and education partnerships with Washington Sea Grant funded people, I try to think out of the box. Upper right-hand corner was a 1-minute play about the effect of carbon dioxide on muscle attachment that cooked up in about half an hour at AGU meeting several years ago. And I am playing the role of a blue mussel attached to a rock, and my friend Vonley is about to weaken my attachment. In the lower left-hand corner is a concept map that I developed for a course that I started co-teaching last summer with a faculty member at the UW, Eli Wheat, about carbon. And so that's an example of a student learning opportunity. I helped co-create a course. It was my first at the UW, but we can also do smaller things. We don't need to build whole courses. And finally, bottom right-hand corner is a fun animated video explaining the science between a Sea Grant funded study about the interactions between oysters, eelgrass, and a pathogen of eelgrass. I think that's next slide. So these are the sorts of things that I get excited about doing. And given the time frame, looking out to 2022, I may have some time in my work plan to be an active participant in the project, but at the very least, I can help you develop ideas for your pre-proposals and full proposals if you're invited to proceed. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. I appreciate that. Kevin Decker is up next.
Hey, all. Kevin Decker. I use he, his pronouns, and I am the coastal economist with Washington Sea Grant. My research interests typically lie in economics, so economic impact and contribution analysis, looking at overall coastal economic development, how coastal hazards affect economic resilience for coastal communities, also fisheries and aquaculture industries, and I forgot to add on here, but just other broad marine industries such as commercial fishing and things like that. Next slide, please. So currently, I'm working, well, back in 2015, I completed an aquaculture assessment for the state legislature. It's currently an outdated document, so I'm on a project to update that with current production and value data. This, instead of being in a printed format, is going to be in an online format on my WA Coast Economist dashboard where people can interact with the data, make it a little bit more usable. I'm currently wrapping up a project looking at increasing economic resilience in ocean shores to address seasonality caused by their tourism-based economy. Historically, I've worked on maintaining the crabber towboat lanes, so I'm continuing with that. I just got funded to look at the business and economic planning for seaweed aquaculture systems. This is a system-wide analysis, and we're developing a handbook for the seaweed aquaculture industry. And then I also maintain the WA Coast Economist blog site that provides some foundational economic data for planning and informational purposes. Next slide, please. How I can help you with your project is I can support your outreach and engagement plan, help connect you with local partners, and also help to develop and implement any research projects that you may be looking at. So feel free to reach out to me if that's something that you're interested in. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. Next up is Sean McDuff.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean McDuff, he, him pronouns. I am the Assistant Director for Community Engagement, which means I supervise about half of the outreach staff that Sea Grant currently employs. So there's a little bit about me. This is a little bit different because I haven't been here long, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about myself, and hopefully, if there's some interest there, then you could reach out. But I got my start in the tropics studying land-sea connections, a little bit different than what Meg was talking about. Here, mainly interested in how kind of watershed health impacts, adjacent coral reefs, and that's kind of what I did my study on. And coming from these small islands, growing up and going to school in islands, there's a certain way of thinking that I have. I've always looked at it as a impairment, in my entire life, but I see it now as, it's a different perspective. So, if you want a different perspective, like I could maybe provide some of that. Next slide. And these are what I'm interested in currently. I like anything fisheries, resource harvest, and understanding that, folks, harvest resources for many reasons, and one of those is for food, which I think is very important. I'm interested in applicable science, something useful that could benefit multiple communities. I like those win-win scenarios. I think those are always the best type of projects. I'm interested in the flow of information, from young kids asking older folks, their grandfathers or their uncles, aunties, just asking questions, learning about their environment, and using that as a teaching opportunity. One example, but here, we have traditional local knowledge and other knowledge systems that are, when incorporated with Western science, I think could be very powerful. I like partnering up with unique entities. I won't go into detail what all those are, but I think there's some value in looking at non-conventional partnerships, and I intend to explore that. Russell, if you didn't know that, I hope this is not a surprise to you. I root for the underdogs here, and water quality, nutrification, all that kind of stuff I think is important when you're trying to manage entire ecosystems. So, small stuff I think are cool. And, providing access, I think, is a Sea Grant. That's part of our mission is to try and provide these resources that we have as an organization to as many communities here in our state, and trying to be better at that. So those are some short things about me. That's it. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Sean.
And
up next is Nicole Fagan.
And I will continue on. Nicole has another engagement, so she is one of our coastal management specialists. So I'll try my best to represent Nicole here. If you have any questions, you could reach out to me. I'm going to forward you to Nicole. So bear with me. I'm going to be reading a little bit because I cannot do this without reading what Nicole had to say. So you can go back one slide. Thanks. So these are some of the things Nicole does in the working waterfronts space here. Here in Sea Grant, we're part of a national partnership. We working with the National Working Waterfront Network, and Nicole coordinates information about working waterfronts and provides that to other through webinars and podcasts. And with the partnership, with American Shorelines Podcast Network. She's produced a number of podcasts that gets widely distributed. And for her local outreach, Nicole can coordinate with the local working waterfront organizations here in Washington, including the Washington Marine Federation. And she's planning more coordinated outreach to smaller working waterfronts this year. Next slide. In terms of alternatives to shoreline monitoring, Nicole develops training programs related to soft shore alternatives to armoring. She works with programs to provide training and technical assistance to homeowners to create soft shore projects. She works with ESRP Shore Friendly program to develop more technical assistance for communities. And she looks for scientific research that supports work of promoting soft shore projects. So if any of you PIs are kind of in this space, I would really suggest getting in touch with Nicole. Specifically, she's interested in research that demonstrates how soft shore approaches can address impacts associated with sea level rise. And some of the outreach opportunities she can provide is provide trainings and webinars on soft shore projects where we can highlight research on this topic. She manages a listserv of over 700 coastal and shoreline planners and resource managers in the state and distributes information to them on a daily basis. Next slide, please. In the coastal resilience planning field, she works with a number of jurisdictions on updating their shoreline master programs and looking for ways to incorporate sea level rise. She's helping to create a framework for vulnerability assessments related to planning. She's working with the Cosmos, or the Coastal Storm Modeling System team, to develop outreach materials as the system becomes available for Washington. She's developed webinar series on sea level rise and planning at the national level. And some of the outreach components here, she can work closely with the American Planning Association of Washington and working with many different local communities in planning, as well as the Washington Department of Ecology. And that's all for Nicole. So if you have anything related to that, you could reach out to me and Nicole. All right, so continuing on, I'm going to be Bridget here for the next few minutes. Bridget also has another prior engagement. She's one of our coastal policy specialists. She's based out at Bellingham. So if you have any North Sound connections, you could reach out to Bridget. Some of her work, however, does encompass the entire state. So Bridget coordinates the state's King Tides program, where community members are asked to submit photos of king tides on the MyCoast app and website. And photos are used to communicate sea level rise and ground truth models. Bridget hosts king tide viewing parties where she talks about king tides and localized sea level rise projections. She also works on the Clean Vessel Act with state and local partners. She works with boaters and marine operators to manage vessel sewage. She has coordinated research with UW Environmental Engineering to better understand how boating sewage affects sewage treatment facilities in rural areas. And Bridget also coordinated science advisory panel for marine spatial planning process and conducted outreach along Washington's coast, which involve understanding all the stakeholder groups and human use marine resources along the coast. Next slide, please. And these are just some of Bridget's interests. She enjoys engaging with communities, talking about king tides and sea level rise. She works with a lot of marinas on adaptation, planning in regards to sea level rise. She has experience with marine spatial planning, and with the things she's interested in, the research there that connects or helps her answer some of these questions, I think is grounds, is open for collaboration there. So that's Bridget.
Okay, my turn. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Fiskin. I'm a marine operations specialist. I have a background in commercial fishing in Southeast Alaska and off the coast, and have been providing outreach to tribal and non-tribal fishermen for over 25 years. Part of this outreach consists of workshops in safety and technical training which includes hydraulics, marine wiring, and diesel engine troubleshooting. I also work with recreational boaters, the same type of workshops for them. And I do some seafood marketing for commercial fishermen, if helping them get into direct markets. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. Up next is Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Garrison Laney, and that's my title, Coastal Hazard Specialist. And I really focus on tsunamis. So my background has been mostly in geology, looked at a lot of the evidence around Washington State and also a little bit in Northern California for ancient tsunamis, and I've done a bit of work on those. I'm interested not only in that, but also in tsunami hazard assessments through tsunami modeling and what that also, how that may change in the future with sea level rise. I'm also do a fair bit of education and outreach, and I'm a liaison with the NOAA Center for Tsunami Research, which is in PMEL in Seattle. Next slide, please. So I have a few different current projects going on. In the lower left, that's a shot capture from a model that I ran for the Port of Bellingham. It's a group of us, Washington Emergency Management Division and the Department of Natural Resources, and a few others from the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Emergency Management are collaborating on a pilot study to look at what are the tsunami hazards specific to the port and waterfront areas. And we hope that that project will be continuing that with new locations moving forward. I'm also involved in a couple of different NSF coastlines and people projects, which are really interdisciplinary, so that's exciting. And in the upper right, that's a picture of me giving a talk at Washington's Tsunami Roadshow. So I do kind of split my time between research and outreach, and what I can add to your project would be any kind of tsunami hazard component and or tsunami hazard outreach or engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate that. Up next is Brandy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandy Homdahl, she, hers, and I am relatively new to Washington Sea Grant. I started last fall, and I am a fisheries outreach specialist. So since I started, I've been working on some training programs and some outreach directly to fishermen and fishermen development programs. Some of my areas of interest are harvester, processor, resource development in all kinds of ways, whether it's seafood, byproducts, bycatch, trying to find different ways to increase the relationship between harvesters and processors and the resource. I work directly in seafood regulations, keeping both fishermen and processors updated on what's going on in the regulatory world for seafood. I'm starting to work with the Working Waterfront Group and helping to develop fisheries processing and harvesting as part of an integrated working waterfront by developing it as a tourism tool. I work with small processors and fishermen who are interested in direct marketing to work with safe quality seafood handling, parasite destruction, HACCP plans, prerequisite programs, GMPs and SSOPs, all of those things that deal with seafood handling from harvest all the way through the supply chain. I'm working with some processors and fishermen to develop manufacturing improvements, whether it's more effective gear or how better to quickly process seafood, those kinds of infrastructure and equipment developments. And then sustainable fisheries, just trying to be involved in whether it's the MSc program or fisheries studies to determine whether or not underutilized or unresearched species are sustainably managed, including the development of new fisheries. And that's what I have. The way that I could help you is if you're looking for direct contact to either processors or fishermen who are actively fishing the coast. I live in Astoria, Oregon, and I cover the southeast corner of Washington, but my background is 30 years of seafood processing in Alaska and up and down the coast. I can also assist if you're looking for product, if you are specifically needing some kind of product for your research and you need that sourced either from the fisherman or from a processor, I can make those kind of connections. So good luck to everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandy. Nicely done. Terry is up.
Hi, I'm Terry King. I am the aquaculture and marine water quality specialist here in sunny Shelton. I've been stationed here for a number of years and kind of the center of aquaculture in the state, it seems like. We have net pens for fish and shellfish galore. So I do a lot of work on providing technical assistance for aquaculture producers. So if your proposal was talking about, inventing a new widget and trying it out on a farm, or, looking for a new widget that might help solve a specific problem, happy to help. Seafood safety obviously is key for all of this, making sure that product is safe from norovirus, fecal coliform, all the bacterias and all the other things you can think of. As you can see in the photo, I spend quite a bit of time on shellfish mortality, and that's an oyster deathbed. And unfortunately, I've been working on that topic for the last 35 years. So I do spend quite a bit of time on water quality because it's the water. It's what drives all of the things that we have in our region, from the safe seafood, et cetera. Harmful algal blooms, shellfish restoration. So a lot of aquaculture can lead to shellfish restoration, but it's also a great point of involving citizens to helping with and reconnect with our communities, our shellfish communities, and having them really value that. And then the overarching Washington Shellfish Initiative is something else that I've spent some time on. I am a boots on the ground person. So if you need to make connections to someone or, really get dirty, I'm your person, and I'd be happy to talk to you in the breakout room.
Thanks, Terry. I've never actually seen an oyster deathbed before. I was a little bit sobering. Up next is Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Linhart, she, hers, and I'm the crab team coordinator here at Washington Sea Grant, and it's fun to see some familiar names in the participant list. So thanks for your interest. Just a quick background. I have a bachelor in biology and a master's in marine affairs. And prior to my experience here at Sea Grant, I was the water stewardship program coordinator with WSU Kitsap Extension, where I worked with a large network of volunteers and partners. I've been a national park ranger up in Alaska. I've also been a naturalist in different places and a science technician in different places as well. So with that, my interests lie in science communication, community science. And when I say community science, I also mean citizen science, kind of the same thing, volunteer management, and then outreach and community engagement. Next slide, please. So my current work, I work, as I said, I'm the crab team coordinator. So crab team is a pretty fun name, I think, because it really is a network of all kinds of volunteers and partners across the Puget Sound region. And we are expanding to the coast in a different capacity. But here in Puget Sound, we rely largely on volunteers. So we have 50 sites across Puget Sound and about 150 or more volunteers and staff, depending on the year, that help us essentially keep our eyes on the beach for an invasive European green crab. And so our goals are essentially to identify an early detection. So where are these guys? And then also inform any impacts if they do ever become established. We have that baseline information. So as the coordinator of this program, I work with all these volunteers through recruiting, training, managing the program. We provide a lot of educational opportunities. And then I also help out in the field. So I get to get out and be a part of those monitoring processes as well. Next slide, please. So if you're looking for some help in the outreach realm, I'm happy to chat with you. I have a lot of experience kind of in different capacities in terms of outreach materials. I'm really interested in the creative aspect of, I've helped create videos for students, whiteboard animations, story maps with Esri. So lots of different ways of kind of portraying information. And then if you're looking to engage with people directly, I'm also very interested in experiencing creating events. So whether that be combining art and science and creating kind of a different space for people to learn, or maybe field trips, things like that. Those are also things I can help think through. And then I'm also experienced with working with volunteers and best practices involved. So that's all for me. Feel free to connect if you'd like to talk about any of these things.
Thanks, Amy. I think we're back to Emily. Or maybe not.
Hi, folks.
Oh, there she is.
Can folks hear me? Great. Thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Emily Grayson, and my pronouns are she, hers. I'm a marine ecologist at Washington Sea Grant. It's convenient that I'm right after Amy because she just gave a great summary of a program that we work on together, which is Crab Team. My background is as an invasion biologist. I have been studying invasive species since I was on the East Coast as an undergraduate, and then up through my work in the biology department at the University of Washington, where I focused on, instead of invasive crabs, there I was focusing on native crabs and invasive snails through the lens of predator-prey interactions. But broadly, my research has covered topics related to estuaries, conservation and restoration, biodiversity science and informatics, and citizen and community science, as well as science communications, a particular interest of mine. Next slide, please. So as Amy talked about, she and I work together extremely closely on Crab Team, where I'm the program lead. And that sort of means doing a little bit of everything. So as you heard Amy talk about, Crab Team is at its core a network of community science volunteers conducting early detection monitoring for European green crab. But the program has also grown to have a really strong research component where we collaborate with researchers on a number of projects related to population genetics, environmental DNA assay development, and other programs or other questions. And in addition, we also work very closely with managers on both the US and Canada to help hone management efforts to be as effective and efficient as possible, increasing capacity anywhere people want to do work looking for green crab and removing them. Next slide, please. So the skills and capacity that I can bring have to do with some of the experience I have building and refining volunteer training and instruction materials. I really, through Crab Team, have developed a lot of relationships with local stewardship and volunteer groups within the state of Washington. And so those connections can be helpful on any number of projects. Also, we have had some fun over the years developing social media presence, which can be a really good way not only to connect with the public, but also with other scientists and folks with a scientific interest in whatever your research topic is. And then I also really enjoy just developing research projects and programs and finding different ways to answer a lot of questions related to soft sediment marine ecosystems and biological invasions and community science programs and how they work. And I think that's it.
I am muted. Thanks, Emily. Let's go to Ian next.
Yeah, hi everybody. Ian Miller. I'm Coastal Hazard Specialist for Washington Sea Grant based in Port Angeles. And I work sort of along with a variety of our other staff that you've heard from broadly on our coastal resilience portfolio. This past year, a lot of my focus has been on some community scale coastal hazards assessments. So the example projects here are associated with working with the Port Campbell and the Makah tribes on some sort of assessments focused on the boundaries of their tribal lands, and also play a role as a sea level rise specialist for Sea Grant, work with a variety of entities, especially through our recently concluded Washington Coastal Resilience Project, which provided my role was to provide sea level rise projections. And so I have continued to provide technical support to a variety of entities associated with understanding and interpreting sea level rise information. Next slide, please. So what can I do for your project? Like a lot of my colleagues, I can provide support for your outreach and engagement plan, especially if your project has any kind of footprint on the Olympic Peninsula, where I can provide a relationship to coastal communities, connections with local managers. I can also provide potentially a partner on a research project. I'm especially interested, as I mentioned, in sea level rise, coastal erosion, sea level rise related hazards, so flooding, climate integration into planning. So how we translate this science into information or resources or engagement or outreach or whatever it takes to try to sort of turn the needle, if you will, on improving our planning for hazards in coastal communities in Washington State. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate the intro. Nicole Nahr is up next.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and spend a few hours this morning with you. I am also relatively new to Washington Sea Grant. I started in the fall as an aquaculture specialist. So a little bit about my background. I am trained as a social scientist. I am an anthropologist, and recently I was a postdoc with the NOAA West Coast region and worked with them on kelp conservation and restoration research, and then also I'll focused a lot on seaweed aquaculture and bringing a social science perspective to that. I also have a background as a high school science educator, and that informs a lot of my thinking around outreach and education. In terms of my interests and expertise, my research focuses a lot on cooperation and conflict in coastal communities. So I worked in Tanzania, I worked in Baja California Sur in Mexico, and now I'm applying that perspective here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm very interested in social license and aquaculture, and specifically seaweed aquaculture and shellfish aquaculture, and very interested in using interdisciplinary social science methods, and also K through 12 education and bringing a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens to that work. Next slide, please. Current and recent projects, sorry, 9 months old, I'm wrangling. I'm working at Washington Sea Grant in a coordinator role with the Washington Coast Shellfish Aquaculture Study. And I also lead the West Coast Regional Aquaculture Hub that we're working on some seaweed focused projects. And recently with NOAA, I was working on the kelp conservation and recovery plan. I worked on the cultural significance for Pacific Northwest Tribes appendix, and been working a lot on seaweed aquaculture outreach and education with some of my colleagues at Sea Grant. So things that I could help with, networking, especially with NOAA and state agencies, and connections with the Washington Seaweed Collaborative. Also connections that I have from NOAA with tribal resource managers. And I would be happy to help you develop some interdisciplinary social science methods, or help with education and outreach plans, or help you think about including diversity, equity, inclusion in your proposals.
Thanks, Nicole. And she clearly can also bring some of the new interns on board to support our efforts. All right, Nancy is up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. I use she, her pronouns. So I have been part of Washington Sea Grant family for almost 2 years as a research analyst. I serve primarily as the program coordinator of Puget Sound's phytoplankton monitoring network called Sound Toxins, alongside with Terry King, who is the program manager. So Sound Toxins has over 30 sites across the Sound sampled by people from various partnerships such as tribes, academic institutions, industry, government, and residential communities. And a few of my responsibilities are to train and ensure the program monitors are well rehearsed with sampling, data entry, phytoplankton identification, and safety. I also am in communication with the Department of Health, alerting them of harmful algae in the Sound. So I have dipped my toes into data analysis and visualization work at Washington Sea Grant, and now I am anticipating more, I'm going to be more involved with this type of work soon, since Sound Toxins recently gained funding to estimate the socioeconomic benefits of having a HABs monitoring program in Puget Sound. And lastly, I'm a member of a few diversity, equity, and inclusion groups at Washington Sea Grant. And I want to say there are other Washington Sea Grant colleagues here who are also great resources for DEI related items. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Thanks, Nancy. Melissa Poe is up next.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Poe. I use she, her pronouns. My role at Washington Sea Grant is to advance social science. Some of my training is in environmental anthropology with a smattering of other social science disciplines. The tools in my methods toolkit include community-based participatory action research, and I use rapid ethnographic appraisal tools, traditional knowledge, and others. So some of my areas of interest and expertise are listed here, including cultural ecological restoration, or what we might think of as biocultural landscapes. Also working with communities to define indicators of human well-being that can be used in management and planning. I'm also very interested in actions designed by communities for resilience to ocean change. And in general, food systems, including food security and food sovereignty linked to subsistence and other kinds of local resource harvesting. I'm also keenly interested in thinking about the ways in which environmental justice play out in access to resources, management, and safety and exposure to resources. Next slide, please. So my current projects include a ocean change vulnerability and resilience assessment with community partners on the Olympic coast. I've also done this work along the entire West Coast with fishing communities. Another project includes social and ecological dimensions of clam gardens. This is a restoration focused project where the goals of restoration are for both communities, cultural restoration, and ecosystems. I lead a cross-Pacific network collaboration between Indigenous aquaculture practitioners and scientists in working with clam gardens, fish ponds, and other kinds of Indigenous management approaches. And then I also work with communities on food security and first foods projects. Next slide. So some of the ways that we might be able to work together is I could potentially collaborate with you as a social scientist, providing advice or guidance that if you have interest in my in areas of my wheelhouse. Also, if there are ways that I can help make connections with folks in my networks that would be relevant to you, I'd be happy to think through good strategies. If there are relevant outreach initiatives that would be appropriate for what you're doing and the work that I just described, there could be a good match. And then finally, I'm interested in mentoring students and fellows, other early career researchers who might be trying to advance their social science toolkits or work in interdisciplinary research. So that's a potential. So contact me here if you, or meet me in the breakout room if you want to talk further. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Up next is Alex.
Muted. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Alex Stote. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the crab team coastal specialist at Washington Sea Grant. You've heard about the Crab Team program from Amy and Emily earlier, but my role focuses specifically on green crab populations on the outer Washington coast. My work's mostly concentrated in Grays Harbor and Pacific counties, where I coordinate monthly trapping for the invasive European green crab at designated sites. I'm also helping to lead an assessment of green crab populations on the coast, which involves intensive trapping in various estuary locations. My work has a large focus on outreach, communication, and coordination with various state agencies, coastal community members, and a handful of coastal tribal resource managers. And another focus of my work is data analysis and visualization, including mapping, and as well as communications, including blogging and reporting. I actually started at Washington Sea Grant 3 years ago as a research assistant while I was a graduate student at the School of Marine Affairs at UW. And I spent 2 of those 3 years as a shellfish aquaculture specialist working on the Washington Coast Shellfish Aquaculture Project that Nicole was describing earlier. In that role, my research focused mostly on interactions between shellfish aquaculture and burrowing shrimp species. And I was also responsible for organizing some live and virtual workshops and various speaker series. So aside from this work that I've already described, I can also be a resource for you if you're interested in learning more about our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at Washington Sea Grant. I'm part of several DEI groups here, and I'm always keen to talk more with folks who are interested in learning more about that work. So thanks again.
Thanks, Alex. Great intro. Miley is up next.
Hi, y'all. I'm Miley Sullivan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an education specialist at Washington Sea Grant. Russell got to talk a little bit about my programs earlier, so I'll just let you know sort of how I feel like I can be helpful. In addition to running NOAA Science Camp and our Orcable competition, I'm also a part of several education networking groups and work with a lot of teachers and scientists through our programs and also through these networks. So I feel like I can be helpful to you in connecting you with teachers if you're interested in, piloting an outreach or education component of your research. I can help you look at curriculum and put it in the hands of folks in our network. These networks include the Northwest Aquatic and Marine Educators, otherwise known as NAME. And they're a great sort of regional group to put feelers out if you're looking for folks to partner with or just test your outreach. And also the National Marine Educators Association, NMEA, which is a more national version of that group of educators. And just in general, I sort of love all things education related. And so if you just want to throw ideas past me and get feedback, I'm happy to help and just connect you with folks that I know who might be doing something similar or might have ideas for resources for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and I look forward to chatting with you.
Thanks, Miley. Up next is Brent.
Hi, everybody. I'm a sustainable aquaculture specialist at Washington Sea Grant. I've been doing research and outreach at UW for something like 25 years, most recently here at Washington Sea Grant. I work primarily on sustainability in shellfish farming and restoration. And virtually all my work involves broad collaborations with farmers, restoration practitioners, state and tribal resource managers, and other scientists and educators. So to give you an idea of a few things, I'm just going to mention a few things that I am doing currently in the research arena. One is investigating hormesis in shellfish. Hormesis is a positive biological response to low doses of a stressor. And my colleagues and I have now seen this repeatedly in geoduck, that when they're exposed to low pH seawater as larvae, they actually outgrow their controls as juveniles. We're calling this the What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger project. Another project is aimed at understanding why triploids, triploid shellfish, which have an extra chromosome set, often underperform diploids in stressful environments. And farming triploids can be important, both ecologically because they're effectively sterile and can't interbreed with wild shellfish, and also economically, because oysters that aren't spawny are considered more palatable in the marketplace. Understanding the triploid performance issue is an important first step to finding a solution. And finally, I'll describe another project aimed at sterile shellfish, but we're using a different approach here. So instead of making triploids, we're looking at a method that's already in use with finfish, which involves temporarily disrupting the expression of a gene during very early development. And because expression of this particular gene is essential for primordial germ cell development downstream, no germ cells develop and the fish ends up being sterile. In shellfish, unfortunately, we have no idea what this gene is. So our group is applying this really cool tool, single cell sequencing, to embryonic oysters to find some candidate genes. So I work on a lot of other cool outreach and education and research projects, and I'm always open to new collaborations, so please reach out. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent. Up next is Melissa Shutton.
Hi there, good morning. My name is Melissa Shutton. I use she, her pronouns. I am a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, which is in Oklahoma, and I also have family who are enrolled with Upper Skagit Tribe here in Washington. I currently serve as the Equity, Access, and Community Engagement Lead with Washington Sea Grant, and I recently transitioned from having a position as a social scientist. So as you can imagine, I have skills within both of those areas. I consider myself working towards inclusion, diversity, and equity within conservation efforts, and in the ocean in particular, but in the environment more broadly. And that includes environmental justice and tribal engagement. Next slide, please. I have 3 areas that I focus on my time at Washington Sea Grant. One is working to develop and pilot an urban marine program that focuses on having equitable access to marine foods and resources within urban communities of color. The other area is leading our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within Washington Sea Grant. And then I am working towards supporting our staff and incorporating DEI aspects within each of our programs in the organization. And so one aspect that I believe I could support is to identify ways that you might be able to also incorporate aspects of DEI within your program, as well as any interest in also doing some of the urban marine work as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Up next is Wei Ying.
Hi everyone, this is Wei Ying Wong. I use she, her pronouns. So I'm also one of the new folks. I have been here 5 months. So I'm the Assistant Director for Science and Technical Assistance. I, along with Sean, help oversee the outreach staff. So as you can imagine, I'm pretty new. I'm still kind of transitioning from a very different ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem. I am a social scientist by training, but primarily my background is really in terms of looking at people's interaction with the environment and stakeholder engagement. So that there is kind of a range. And most recently, I came from the zoo and aquarium world. So I was with the Woodland Park Zoo here in Seattle. And so I was heavily involved with the informal learning arena. And I was leading the learning and innovation team. And so with my areas of interest, kind of really, I'm happy to help you engage with broadly if you're interested in engaging with zoos and aquariums, both on a local basis as well on a national basis. I was very heavily involved across the network. And also, weirdly specifically, I am very interested in really providing support if you're interested in social cultural dimensions of invasive species, largely because that's my dissertation research, my postdoc, and also I was doing consulting work subsequent to that. Broadly speaking, I'm really interested in looking at people, knowledge construction, cultural perspectives, behavior, and really kind of addressing systems of power and privilege. So really social change and system transformation work. Yeah, let me know how I can help you with any of that stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Wei Ying. Up next is Marianne.
Hello. Yes, I am Marianne. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director for Communications. I manage the Washington Sea Grant Communications team, which is a resource for you. My background includes over 25 years of experience working in communications for science and art education institutions in Washington State. My expertise and areas of interest are as a mentor and manager of the Science Communications Fellowship Program. I also work extensively with state partners and staff on water quality and recreational boating, aquaculture, and commercial fisheries marketing. The communications team can amplify your work to a larger audience through a suite of vehicles. We have on our team a graphic designer, a web designer and IT specialist, and a science writer and editor. And as you know, scientific research is only effective when successfully communicated. So some of the things we can do to help share your project findings include writing an article geared to a general public audience and placing that in the Sea Grant newsletter we call the Sea Star, or our monthly email newsletter. And we can also share news of our funded projects through social media, such as Twitter and Facebook. And on the website, we post a page with links to your work in our research section, and sometimes we feature those on the homepage. We also work with local journalists, newspapers, and radio, and we also produce our own radio show called Coastal Cafe, and we can feature your work on that. And we can provide one-on-one advice on how to raise awareness on marine and coastal issues within our local communities, which could help inform your outreach efforts. So that's something to think about. We are basically here to help broadcast your accomplishments. I usually work with PIs when projects are nearing completion or you have a really compelling human interest story around your research. If you have a paper about to be published, for example, please give me a heads up in advance so we can prepare to share your news. So contact me for any follow-up and I can let you know what is possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. And Julie Keister just called me out, and she is right. Our communications team is truly amazing. Up next is Jeff Adams.
Hello, my name is Jeff Adams, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here even more remotely and less in person than others. But thanks again, and I look forward to connecting with some of you in the future. I'll minimize this little piece of it and go through a couple slides here. So I'm indeed a marine ecologist with Washington Sea Grant. I use he, him pronouns. And I've been at the UW since the early 90s, first as an undergraduate, then as a graduate student, and fortunately coming back to work with Washington Sea Grant for the last 15 years. And in the middle, I worked with the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation down in Portland. And that's where I started working with community members to collect information on biological assessment of watersheds, working with taxonomists, working with resource managers to kind of combine all that and work toward improving watershed health across the Northwest. Working with Washington Sea Grant, I got to integrate some of those same ideas and kind of that same diversity of activities with research, education, outreach, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that work and work with really cool people. My contact information is right here, jaws@uw.edu, and my mobile number, so feel free to text or call. These are my project interest areas. A lot of the focus of my work, particularly in Kitsap County, where I have an office, although I work more regionally as well, is around working with community members, training, sharing information, providing opportunities in community science, providing more networking to opportunities in community science and stewardship, particularly with my partners at WSU Extension over there. Aquatic invasive species and naturalist interpretation are both passions of mine and go way back in my experience and activities. And if either of those are opportunities that connect with your work, I'd love to connect with you. Aquatic invasive species, you obviously have Emily Grayson as well as an amazing resource. K-12 education, if I work a lot with youth and really enjoy that. And if that's something that you're connecting with Miley on or that my interests could help with, I'd be happy to. Shoreline restoration, I'm not working directly with homeowners at the moment, but it is something I've done in the past, and we do work on monitoring. Recreational harvest is an area that looking at further collaboration in the future, and working towards safe and sustainable harvest for a lot of different communities. And green stormwater infrastructure, I've worked on rain gardens and worked on the issue more broadly in the past, and have that experience if you're interested, if you're working in that area, and it would be of value to connect with me on. I wish you all the best on your proposals and your pursuits, and feel free to reach out to me if I can be of any help. Thanks a lot.